Welcome back, my friends. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. So I started looking into the Watts case a couple of years ago and jumped into just about every rabbit hole you can think of. I've been through every page in the discovery, trying to find something solid that would put NK in that house during the crimes or on that day. I've looked at the neighbor's security footage. The phone pings put her in the general area, but she could have just been driving to work. And there's nothing public about September Lady. It's a dead end. The woman seen walking up the residence, but never seen leaving the house. It ends at just neighbor Nate reporting of it, and that's it. I'm also hearing that the security footage of Nate's showing what appeared to be NK standing in the driveway was doctored. So I'm not sure what to think anymore. Maybe you guys can find something I missed, which is why I'm putting the whole discovery up on my channel, so we can all dive in together. I'll read some of the documents in this video. Going into the family dynamics. Discovery page 1397, supplemental report, no property, FPD officer Dave Baumhover, October 7th, 2018, time 10:16, location 333 5th Street, arrestees, suspects. The following information was documented at the time it was gathered. The date of this report is not indicative of when the investigation occurred. On October 2nd, 2018, I received from via fax Sandra, Sandy, and Frank Rusick typed statements generated by both Frank and Sandy. The first page was a typed statement from Frank which described his perception of how Watts was acting differently during June 21st through June 26th. Sandy's typed statement followed and is a 10-page letter addressed to me. It described how Shanann and C. Watts met in 2009 and a broad overview of their relationship over an approximately 9-year period. The statement also describes some dynamics between Shanann's and C. Watts' family. I scanned both Frank and Sandy's written statements into the digital case file and retained the original copies for the physical case file. I also requested a written statement from Sandy regarding the phone conversation she had with Watts on 8/13/18. That statement is pending. Nothing further. Detective Dave Baumhover. Attention, Dave Baumhover. June 21st through 26th. I noticed Chris was acting different with the girls. He was yelling at them, raising his voice with them, which made me look at him like, what are you doing? Also, when Shanann would FaceTime him, which she did every day while she was here on vacation, she would ask him if he was going to pay attention to the girls. He was looking like he was looking at something else. When he came here for the last week of vacation, the girls would not go to him, they would go to mommy, and he didn't like that at all, the look on his face like he was mad at them. I went to the beach with them for the first 3 days, and Celeste would say, that's my truck, talking about Papa's truck. He said that I have a truck too. She said, but that's my truck, talking about Papa's. The first night he was strange. He came out and lay on the floor in the living room where I was sleeping on the couch. I was watching TV, and when I shut the TV off, he sat up and I said, what are you doing? He said he had a backache and it would help him. That was strange to me for him to lay on the floor. Thinking about it, he was acting kind of distant because of the girls wanting me more than him. Looked like he didn't care, his mind was somewhere. Frank Rusick. All the signs were there, but no one ever expects something like this to happen to them. He was part of the family, right? How could anyone expect or prepare for something like this? I've seen so many people comment how they wish they could stop Shanann from going into that house when she did for the last time. I'm sure nobody more than Mrs. Atkinson. Again, no one can ever imagine something like this happening. So what can you do? I wanted to go into the family dynamics in this video because I asked myself, could this still have happened had he never hooked up with NK? In 2009, Shanann built her home in Charlotte, North Carolina, battling her lupus. Her friend told her about her cousin, Chris, saying he's a very nice guy, quiet, etc. So Shanann got a friend request from him on Facebook. Months later, she called me saying, Mom, I met a nice guy. He is a mechanic. I said, as long as you're happy and he's good to you. A few months after that, Shanann and Chris had a family gathering, and Frank and I and his parents had a cookout. They were floored when they saw her house. Shanann was a hard worker and wanted this to eventually sell. and make a profit to keep doing so, eventually be mortgage free. Comes from a family of contractors, so Shanann was eager to please his parents, waiting on them hand and foot. When Shanann left the back porch, and it was just me and Chris's mom, she leaned over to me and said, "Shanann was married before?" I said, "Yes, just like your daughter was." Then a while later, again when we were alone, and she said, "I just don't see it." I said, "What?" She said, "I don't feel that your daughter loves my son." I knew she was going to be a thorn in that marriage because my mother-in-law was the same way. So every time we had a cookout, his mom and sister were very quiet and distant. We weren't accepted. They made that known. So forward to engagement party. Shanann and I shopped for food, wine, etc. Spent a lot. Jamie, Chris's sister, wanted all the invitations so she could help. So Shanann told me, "Mom, Jamie wants to help send of the invitations. What do you think? Is she accepting me? I'm gonna let her do it." So this mom and sister prepped food and cross-contaminated everything. So Shanann couldn't eat any of it. Gluten-free, nothing. Everything was made with gluten. So thank God I made lots of food I brought. At least my daughter could eat. So as the night went on, Shanann and I went to the bathroom and Shanann told me, "Mom, I had like 80 invites and only immediate family came." So Shanann called people the next day to learn that they never received an invite. Shanann was devastated. Shanann and Chris were upset, so they knew not to ask again. Then came the wedding. No one from his whole family came. Just his grandmother and uncle. No mom, dad, sister, aunts, and cousins. No one came. Chris spoiled Shanann and vice versa. They were so in love. They were a great team. They moved to Colorado and lived with Shanann's friend for a year while they were building their house. Everything was great. Shanann saw something on Chris's private part that didn't look normal. They went to the doctor, cancer, so it was removed. She saved his life. Then Shanann got pregnant with Bella Marie. Everyone was so excited and happy. Shanann and Chris were wonderful parents. Chris and Shanann were working at the Ford dealership in Longmont. Shanann was selling cars. Chris was the head mechanic. A great team. Shanann was top sales. Then Bella came, so Shanann stopped working because of a high-risk pregnancy. She was a trooper through the whole thing. Both families seemed happy. Chris's sister never flew to Colorado at any time they were out there. Cindy and Ronnie came 2 times a year. Shanann worked at Children's Hospital at nights and also sold 31 bags, travel bags on the side. Everything was good. Shanann got pregnant with Celeste, and pregnancy was really rough on Shanann with her lupus. Very high-risk pregnancy again, but only this one was worse for Shanann. Water weight gain, severe back pain, shortness of breath, pains in her chest, fatigue, exhaustion. My husband and I sold everything but our house and moved out to live with them, to help our daughter in every way we could. Frank and I had to work to pay our bills too. We were there for 15 months. Chris's mom came out to watch the girls for a few days, while Shanann and Chris went on a business trip with Lavelle, her company. 4 nights, 5 days. During that time, we weren't allowed to see our grandchildren or even eat dinner with them as soon as we got home. She brought them upstairs and stayed upstairs. She wouldn't let us hold them or anything. I found that very odd. One day I asked her why. She said, "What the hell am I here for then?" She screamed in my face in front of my grandchildren and said that I was very controlling. I was just like, wow. I texted Shanann over and over again and she said, "Relax, Mom. I'll take care of it when we get home." It was ridiculous. I never spoke to Chris's mom again. I had enough. After 15 months, I moved back home. It was hard to leave, but I felt it was for the best. I have been home now. 17 months later, my whole family is unalived. My beautiful daughter and beautiful grandchildren, all unalived. Everything seemed fine. Our daughter never spoke about anything bad. She did speak to us about bankruptcy, a lot of debt, with all the medical bills. Bella and Celeste were back and forth to doctors, misdiagnosed for 2 years. I told Shanann that they had asthma and that she needed to fire the doctors. One day she went in and the PA was there and she diagnosed them with asthma. Finally, the girls were doing great, other than earplugs put in and girls being very allergic to tree nuts, which would have caused them death. Celeste was born with her esophagus too small. They went in 3 times to enlarge, steroids like crazy to help her breathe for 1.5 years or longer, all until they were diagnosed with asthma. Then Shanann with her neck surgery, which out of pocket $25,000 they owed, so that's why they were in so much debt. I noticed that when we would FaceTime every night for 4 years straight, looking back starting late May 2018, when we FaceTime, Chris was putting the phone all over the room, ceiling, floor, etc. I said, Chris, you alright? Then he would FaceTime normally. Before Shanann came to North Carolina, Celeste had a rash in her private area, and she went to get a face cloth and some cream. Chris had the phone. I said, Chris, let me see how bad it is, being that I am an aide. So I said, wait, let me move my screen because I couldn't see. He put it right up on her privates. Oh, I was mad. Shanann wanted to come for 6 weeks this summer so she can introduce the girls to Chris's sister Jamie, who never met Celeste or Uncle Frankie, our son. Before the school year started, dance, classes, etc., the best time was now. We were thrilled. Shanann stayed the week here, then weekends with Chris's parents. The first weekend was great with Chris's dad and family. However, the following weekend was a different story. Saturday was rough for Shanann. She was protecting her children from peanuts in every form. Ice cream, a bowl of nuts, an open razor blades just laying around the house. Shanann called her father. Come pick me up now, please. Shanann said Cindy was trying to give the kids ice cream with peanut chips in it. Shanann asked Cindy what kind of ice cream is that. Cindy said, oh, relax, it's just ice cream. Shanann said, please let me read the ingredients. Cindy told my daughter that she was crazy. So the girls walked outside to play with Aunt Jamie. So after Shanann got done explaining to Cindy how dangerous peanut allergy is to the girls, Cindy ignoring Shanann went outside, Jamie walked in, so the girls walked back in, and as Shanann walked in the kitchen, noticed a large bowl of peanuts, now sitting on the table. That wasn't there 2 minutes before. So Shanann called me, explained everything. She said, Mom, I'm being double teamed. And I said, what? She told me everything. But when she told me about the razor blades, I said, what? She changed the subject really quick because my daughter knows I would have been there and caused a big scene. I love my family, protection. I said, Dad's on his way. She got home here and was beside herself. I was furious with her. That someone that you trust would try to get a child sick or die feeding them peanuts? Shanann told 4 people this. Me, Frank, Sandra Garanda, and Nikki. She called Chris that night, and she was so upset. Chris said he will handle it, so Shanann didn't ever go back again to see them. None of Chris's family came to Cece's birthday party, and Cindy sent Cece's package out to Colorado, which is still there in a box at their house. So Shanann and girls and us had a wonderful time the rest of the trip. When Chris came here for his week here and Shanann 6 weeks here. Shanann picked him up at the airport with girls. They were so excited to see their dad that set off the alarm for running up to him. Chris spent the day with his parents and Shanann dropped him off at the nursing home to see his grandma. Shanann and the girls came back here. Chris was acting really weird to Shanann. He didn't have time to really speak to her. Then he was going to stay because we had a storm with no street lights working. Chris's dad brought him back here to our home. Shanann and Chris spoke on our back porch for a few hours about how he has been and the peanut stuff at his mom's house. Chris was distant to Shanann, okay with girls, with us. Shanann was vomiting all night and Chris didn't get up to see how his wife was doing. They left for Myrtle Beach and Frank went with them for a couple days. Being that it was our granddaughter's first time at the beach, Frank left them. I came a day and a half, the girls and I had a blast. Chris was very quiet, doing his own thing and ignoring Shanann. I said to my daughter, is everything okay? And she said, Chris is going to be Chris. So we were at the beach and we went to dinner and Chris drove Shanann and girls, no rooms, so I drove behind them. I was doing 83 miles an hour to catch up with them. And texting Shanann, why is he driving like that? Tell him to slow down. I am not in a race to go to dinner. At dinner, Chris left the table quite a few times. Very silent. He was ignoring the kids and his wife. Cece was being funny and he walked away again. I left the next day, they came 2 days later. I asked Shanann to stay with girls and she said Chris has good insurance for the girls. They went back to Colorado. I'm devastated. P.S. The only reason Chris got fit was because diabetes runs high in his family and Shanann wanted him to live forever. Sandy Rusick. When Sandy Rusick spoke publicly for the first time, saying she loved him like a son, but after hearing what Chris had done, she said that love turned to disbelief and pain. For the Watts family, denial became a coping mechanism. Chris's mother, Cindy, struggled to accept his guilt. In interviews, she insisted she didn't recognize the man the world saw on TV. She said, "I don't think he was capable of it. Something changed him." But for the Rusiks, that line of thinking felt like betrayal. To them, it was clear their daughter and granddaughters were gone because of one person, Chris. I believe Chris was very capable of doing this regardless of his new girlfriend. There was a big divide in that family. Sandy Rusick laid it all out in 10 pages. Chris came off quiet, polite, soft-spoken, a man who rarely raised his voice. He worked long shifts at Anadarko, spent his evenings mowing the lawn or playing with his daughters, and seemed like the model husband. Shanann, on the other hand, was the spark, outgoing, driven. So why the hell did he do this? Because behind closed doors, the couple's personalities clashed. Shanann was expressive, organized, and assertive. Chris was quiet, withdrawn, and increasingly distant. Even their friends said their marriage felt imbalanced. Shanann was fighting for connection, Chris was shutting down. You see, as that silence grew, the pressure between them deepened, silently and visibly until it would eventually explode. The infamous Nutgate incident, a moment that to outsiders might sound trivial, became a breaking point between the two families. When Cindy Watts allegedly gave Bella ice cream containing nuts, despite her allergy, Shanann was furious, and Chris's response? Silence. That silence spoke volumes. Shanann felt abandoned. The Rusicks felt disrespected, and the Watts family felt misunderstood. It was a small argument that revealed a much bigger fracture. Two families with very different ways of expressing love and loyalty. The Watts family dynamic was very different from the Rusicks. Cindy and Ronnie Watts raised their son to be polite, hardworking, and compliant. To them, Chris had always been easygoing, a boy who avoided conflict. But when Shanann came into his life, things changed. Some relatives felt she took over, managing every detail. To Cindy, Shanann's assertive personality felt abrasive, even controlling. In later interviews, Cindy would say she believed her son lost himself in the marriage. Whether or not that's true, those feelings created an emotional divide long before the tragedy occurred. And when it did, those same feelings would color everything that came after.